The fearless man is not the one who does not feel fear. He knows all too well what it feels like to have sweaty palms, to have a racing heart, and to have questions and doubts creep into every corner of his head. But instead of waiting for the trembling to subside, he walks straight into the fire, not because he is reckless, but because he has understood something that most of the world has yet to realize. Fear is not a signal to stop, but an invitation to go forward. We grow up with a dangerous misconception that to do something great, we must wait until we are completely confident, completely sure, completely ready. But the truth is that no one who has ever changed the world has ever stepped out of their comfort zone. The people who make a difference, who rewrite their destiny, who build something beyond their limits, have been afraid. But they do not let fear guide them. They act as if it does not exist. Acting as if you are not afraid is not pretending. It is a decision. It's how you choose to live by principles, not emotions. It's when you know exactly what you're facing, but instead of waiting until you feel ready, you go for it. Because you know that feeling ready never comes, but action over and over again does. People often ask, if one day I stopped being afraid, what would I do? But that's the wrong question. The right question is, if I acted as if I had no fear, what would I do today? Because action is not a reward for overcoming fear. It is the path to overcoming fear. You don't have to be emotionless, tough, or extraordinary to change your life. You just have to change your relationship with fear. Instead of avoiding it, you start listening to it as a signal. Where there is fear, there is opportunity for growth. And then you move forward, not because you are not afraid, but because you do not let fear decide for you. You do not need to wait until you are stronger, better, more recognized by others. Everything starts with the decision. From today, I act as if I am not afraid of anything, and in the process of doing that, you will become a person to whom fear has no place to cling. Not because you no longer feel it, but because you no longer listen to it. And that is true freedom. We often think of fear as the last line of defense, the red sign that stands in front of us. Stop, danger ahead. But what if that's a misconception? What if fear isn't an enemy that blocks our path, but a guide, a subtle compass that points us toward where we really need to go? Think back to the last time you felt afraid. Not vague fear, but a clear fear of something you wanted to do but held back from. Standing up in front of a crowd to say what you believed in, applying for a job you thought you weren't qualified for, or simply speaking the truth in a relationship that was going wrong. Each time, the fear didn't come because you were weak. It came because you were standing on the edge of growth. Fear, if we listen, doesn't scream to stop us. It whispers something deeper. Something important is here. It only appears when you're about to step out of your comfort zone, and because of that, it becomes the perfect compass. It tells you where you are truly being tested and where growth awaits you on the other side. If you start redefining fear not as a barrier, but as a signpost, you will find your approach to life completely changed. Everyone who has ever created something extraordinary has learned this. Thomas Edison, in his quest to create the light bulb, did not back down after 10,000 failures. He did not see failure as a stopping point, but as a guide. Henry Ford, when the world laughed at him for his idea of building a car for everyone, did not back down. He kept going, because he understood that the fear of others did not define his vision. And people like E.C. Barnes, who came to Edison with nothing but a dream, lived as if fear did not exist, even though it surrounded him every step of the way. They were not fearless. They simply don't let it dictate their path. They know that if something doesn't scare them, it's probably not big enough to pursue. Imagine applying this principle to yourself. The next time you feel afraid, don't turn around, stop and ask, is this the next door I need to walk through? Write down the things you're putting off and ask, what am I afraid of here? Behind that answer is often something you truly desire, but haven't had the courage to admit. Redefining fear is revolutionary. You're no longer held back by vague emotions. You're guided by a new principle of life. What scares me can make me grow. Fear is no longer a reason to stop. It becomes a kind of map. Every time you feel it, you don't shrink back. You smile. You know you found the right direction, and you go forward. Not because you are not afraid, but because you now know fear is a compass, not a fence. You don't need to get rid of it. You just need to learn to walk through it. There is a common misconception that has kept millions of people sitting idle while their dreams slowly die. It is the belief that before you act, you must feel ready. That only when you have enough motivation, enough confidence, enough proof that what you are about to do will be successful, then it is the right time to start. But the truth is that if you wait for all of those things to happen before you act, you will never take the first step. Because feelings are not a prerequisite for action. Action is what gives birth to feelings. Belief is not a starting point. It is a reward for those who dare to take the first step. You cannot sit in a room, imagine yourself successful, and then wait for the day when belief will appear in your mind. Belief is the result of doing. It is something that is built step by step from the smallest actions you repeat every day. A person does not become confident because he waits until he is confident before taking action. He did, he repeated, he failed, he revised, and through each time he overcame the discomfort of starting, he became a believer. Thomas Edison didn't wait for inspiration to test the light bulb for the 100th time. He didn't wait for proof that it would work. He did it. He repeated it. He acted as if it were certain. And it was the act of doing it that built the belief, not the other way around. Henry Ford didn't wait for the industry to support his idea before he started building cars. He believed in his vision, but it was his consistent action that built the belief that spread to millions of others. If you're waiting until you feel confident enough to start, you're waiting for a mirage. The feeling of readiness is the end result of commitment and action, not the starting condition. Every great leader, every elite athlete, every bold entrepreneur has one thing in common. They act first and then let belief catch up. The problem is that many people think of belief as a feeling. But belief is really a decision, a deliberate choice, repeated until it becomes a reflex. And every time you act against your doubts, you are implanting a new signal in your brain, a new programming. You are telling your subconscious, I am a person who acts despite uncertainty. I am a person who keeps my word despite external uncertainty. Belief is not a gift for the lucky. It is a reward for the disciplined. You don't need to wait for clear evidence to believe something. You just need a small action that carries great meaning. An email sent with a shaking hand, a phone call made with a pounding heart, an article published with doubts. It is those actions repeated that build a new reality. And when that reality is strong enough, belief will catch up with you. People often think of discipline as coercion, but the truth is that discipline is the shortest path to belief. Because every time you keep your word to yourself, you strengthen your belief that I can believe in me, and from that belief, you begin to see life differently. You no longer act on inspiration, but on mission. You no longer wait for motivation, but create it. And then when others look at you and ask, how can you believe this when there is no evidence? Your answer is simple. I took action. And that action itself builds the belief you see now. You don't have to feel strong to get started. You just have to start, and with each step, each choice, each step through fear, you will become the version of yourself you once thought was just a dream. Because belief does not precede action, action precedes. And belief always catches up with the one who takes the first step. Fear is an uninvited guest who always finds a way to sit down at your table. It doesn't knock, it doesn't ask permission. It walks in with vague questions, negative images, tragic assumptions about the future, and if you're not careful, you'll pour it a cup of tea, sit and listen to it as if it were a trusted advisor. But the truth is, fear is not a guest. It's an intruder, and you have the right to deny it a seat. The problem isn't the existence of fear. It's a natural part of being human. It's there to protect you. But when you let it sit, take the wheel, make decisions for you, you're no longer living by your own choices. You're living by the dictates of an emotion that has no right to define you. Look back at the times you missed opportunities, not because you weren't capable, but because you let fear dictate your actions. You listened to the voice in your head that said, not yet, not good enough, will be rejected, will fail. Each time you gave power to fear, you didn't command it, you obeyed it. To live truly free, you have to start giving orders. You have to look fear in the eye and say, "Thank you for being there, but from now on you no longer have the right to dictate the way." You don't need to eliminate fear to live big. You just need to take back the role of leader in your own mind. And leaders don't ask for the opinion of doubters. Leaders make decisions based on purpose, not on emotion. Imagine that each thought is a member of your strategy meeting. Fear walks in, bringing with it a list of reasons why you shouldn't act. It presents sound logic, emphasizes consequences, and retells past failures. But you don't sit there and listen. You stand up, look it in the eye, and say, "Noted, but this meeting is not about avoidance. It is about moving forward, and my goals have not changed." When you do that, you send a clear signal to your nervous system. Control is back in your hands. Nothing weakens fear faster than decisiveness. When you start acting without negotiating with it, it begins to quiet down. It understands that its voice is no longer being heard. And that doesn't come from convincing yourself that you are no longer afraid. It comes from acting as if fear has no voice. Remember, you don't have to negotiate with fear. Every time you spend time analyzing, reasoning, and probing your feelings, you are letting it live on. But if you stand up, say, "Go and do it," fear will be left behind. No need to beat it. Just don't stop because of it. Starting today, train yourself to have a new reflex. When fear speaks, you don't listen. You act. You write a plan, send an email, make a phone call, walk out the door. Each action is a declaration. I don't listen to fear. I am the one in command here. And gradually fear will understand that it no longer has a place at the table. It will stand outside the door, watching a new person rewrite his own story. No one is born fearless. There is no special gene that gives a group of people the ability to overcome any difficulty without fear. It is all a product of choosing an identity and living in accordance with it. The question is not whether you are afraid or not. The question is, who have you chosen to be in relation to fear? Identity is not something you discover. It is something you decide. It is not something given to you by circumstances, by your past, or by the judgment of others. It is built from within, by how you deal with the moments when you could have backed down but chose to move forward. To change your life, you must change your identity. You cannot continue to live as someone who lets fear dictate your decisions and expect different results. You must claim a new identity and start acting in the mold of that person. If you want to become confident, courageous, you must act as if you are already that person. You have to do what a fearless person would do, even if your hands are shaking and your heart is racing. Here's the secret. Action is not just a means to an end. It's a tool for reprogramming yourself. Every time you act against your fear, you're sending a powerful signal to your brain. I'm not the same person anymore. And if you do it enough times, you won't have to try to believe it. You'll start to feel like you are. That's why it's so important to build a daily ritual. When you repeat certain actions with a clear sense of who you are, you're rewriting the deepest structure of your thoughts and reflexes. Stand in front of the mirror every morning and say out loud, "I am a person who acts despite fear. I am a person who keeps my word. I am a person who doesn't sit still when the opportunity presents itself." This is not a slogan. This is a directive to your nervous system. It is a guide for your body and mind to enter a new day with a specific role. Fearless people are not people who never tremble. They are people who do not allow fear to define their actions. They take action not because they know they will succeed, but because they know that retreat is no longer an option. They have chosen a new identity and committed to it with every little action they take every day. You can do it too. You do not need to wait for another degree, another skill, or another sign from the universe. You simply declare, "From today on, I am a fearless person." Then you act exactly as that person would act, over and over again, until there is no doubt in your mind and no one around you sees the old you anymore. There is only you, the version that has been reborn through choice, through discipline, and through each decision to refuse to retreat. An identity is not something you inherit. It is something you choose, practice, and live each day to the fullest. And if you remain steadfast in your identity as the fearless one, the world will have no choice but to respond to you as if you were. Because you have become what you once only dared to imagine. No great journey is ever completed when the person who is walking still has a way back. When there is an option to retreat, you will always be tempted by safety. When there is still a plan B looming in your mind, plan A will always be something you try but never really live for. You cannot fully commit if you keep the door behind you ajar. If you want to go far, if you want to go deep, you must close all exits and force yourself to only go in one direction, forward. Burn the bridge is not a slogan to shout in moments of excitement. It is a cold, sober, disciplined decision. It is a declaration. I will not allow myself to turn back. I will not hold back any support to justify giving up. I choose to go forward, and I will go forward with no way back. History records those who dare to do so. Hernan Cortez, when he led his small army to the New World, ordered all the ships burned. He understood a simple truth. If there is a place to hide, people will hide, but if there is no way out, people will fight to the end. Henry Ford, when he decided to create a mass market car, abolished the entire assembly line that was operating efficiently to focus all his efforts on the Model T. He bet everything, not only his assets, but also his reputation, on a single vision. There was no way out, there was no way back, there was only one outcome that was allowed to exist: success. We often do not dare to burn bridges because we still want to maintain a sense of security. But what we do not realize is that it is that security that is holding us back from the old version of ourselves. It is the anchor that holds back every effort to break out. Every step forward is slowed down. When you have the option to give up, your mind will always consider it every time you encounter difficulties. But when there are no other options, you are forced to become more creative, more aggressive, and ultimately stronger. Burning bridges does not mean taking risks. It does not mean throwing away your reason or forgetting your responsibilities. It means you are so determined that you are willing to eliminate all escape routes to force yourself forward. It is the declaration of a person who does not live by conditions, but by commitments. And that commitment, when deep enough, will awaken another part of you, a part that you would never have reached if there were still a way out. You do not need to burn everything physically, but you do need to burn the mental escape routes. Phrases like, I will try, let's see. If it doesn't work, then forget it. Remove them from your vocabulary. People around you who always sow doubt and fear, keep your distance. Habits that make you procrastinate, cut them off. That is burning bridges. That is closing all escape routes. And when you do that, you send the strongest signal to yourself: I will go all the way no matter what. From today, look at your biggest goal and ask, is there any door left for me to escape? If so, close it. Burn it. Not because you are reckless, but because you are serious. Because no one builds a life worth living while leaving a path leading back to where they came from. When you force yourself to only have one path, you will be amazed at what you are truly capable of. Because only when you cannot turn back do you begin to truly move forward. When fear is no longer a shackle around your mind, what happens? When you no longer live in the shadow of what ifs, of ifs fail, of ifs people laugh, who will you be? That is not a rhetorical question. It is a question so important that it can shape the rest of your life. Because the person you present yourself to today is not the real you. It is a version that has been distorted by fear, doubt, and limitations passed down from others. Have you ever wanted to say something but stayed silent because you were afraid of being judged? Have you ever wanted to start a new journey but stopped because you were afraid of failure? Have you ever had a burning dream but let it die because of a negative comment from someone? Not because you weren't capable, but because fear has shaped the way you live, the way you think, the way you act. It's not just a fleeting emotion, it's a pattern. An invisible shackle that you've worn for so long that you thought it was a part of you. But imagine if one day you took off those shackles. If you stood up and no longer acted on the orders of fear, you would change the way you walked. You would look people straight in the eye without shying away. You would do what you really want, not what others think is safe. You would speak the truth. You would dare to start, dare to try, dare to fail, and dare to live true to the deepest part of you. When fear no longer controls you, you don't just change your behavior, you change your energy. And that energy makes all the difference. People will feel a strong presence from you, not because you talk loudly or act aggressively, but because you are no longer shying away. You become clear, decisive, and charismatic. Not because you are trying to impress, but because you are authentic. People who are not controlled by fear act from within. They don't wait for validation. They don't wait for perfect conditions. They are not swayed by outside opinions. They don't do things to avoid criticism. They do them because it is true to them. And that makes them undefined by the world around them. They are self-defined. Fear will never go away completely. It will always be there, whispering in your moments of breakthrough. But the difference is, you no longer listen to it. You recognize its presence, but you do not retreat. And from that moment on, you are no longer the same person. You are the one who dares to say, I will, even when no one believes. You are the one who dares to step forward, even when the path is not yet clear. You are the one who does not wait until you are no longer afraid, but walks with trembling in your heart because you know what awaits on the other side of fear is not risk, but the most authentic version of yourself. And then one day, when you look back, you will see one thing clearly. It is not fear that has changed, but you. You have become a person that fear no longer has power over. You have lived as if you were free for a long time, because once you no longer live under the shadow of fear, you do not just live differently, you become a completely different person. The person you were created to be. You don't have to wait for the world to change to start living differently. You just have to change the way you act, and the world will respond. Act as if it's not pretending. It is not lying. It is a conscious choice to step into the reality you want to create before the evidence has shown up, because it is your actions that initiate the new truth. When you act as if you are confident, you don't just fool the world, you reprogram yourself. When you act as if you are worthy, as if you are ready, as if you are unafraid, you send a signal to your mind, this is who I choose to be. And your mind, over time, adapts, adjusts, rebuilds its identity based on what you do. Everything you want to achieve, confidence, respect, opportunity, power, voice, begins with the decision to act as if you already have it, not because you are fooling yourself, but because you are building a new version of yourself with every step, every choice, every word you repeat every day. Act as if is not a tool to overcome difficulties immediately. It is a life strategy. It is a reminder that reality is not created by beliefs, but by consistent behavior. When you change the way you behave, you also change the way the world responds to you. When you change the frequency you emit, you also change the frequency of what you attract to you. You don't have to be perfect to start. You just have to start. You don't have to wait for approval to act like approval. You just have to act. Every time you step forward, you are creating a world where you are the one who is in control, not the one who is led. And that world grows with every small decision you make every day. Because in the end, you don't become the person you dream of by waiting or wishing. You become them by living as if you were them today. No hesitation, no doubt, just taking steps. And each step is a declaration. I do not wait for belief to act. I act to create belief. And that is when reality begins to change.